Good evening and welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Solomon, and with me, as always, is the Honorable J.P. Marzullo.
Hey, guy.
How you doing, J.P.?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad nothing happened over the weekend. I got a lot of rest that way.
We had a lot to talk about last week.
Yeah, we did.
And we got just as much to talk about this week.
Yeah.
As always, we're sponsored by the Wilson Hill Pistol Club, 1732 Lakeshore Road, wilsonhillpistol.org. Open membership meeting the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Again, we don't have a waiting list at the Pistol Club. The oldest sports shooting club in the state. So we ended last week. It was Wednesday, and then we had an absolutely fabulous Thursday night at the RNC.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Can I redo the Hulk Hogan moment?
I don't know. Can you tear it off? Oh my God! Oh my God! Between him and Kid Rock, holy smokes! Oh my God!
So that was an epic speech. Again, I'm the conspiracy theorist on this show, guys.
Yep.
All right, so Trump ends just after midnight. A speech that's supposed to unify the world and save the world, right? He's going to end wars, right? And all of that business.
And unite everybody.
And within like an hour, this little company, this little tiny Ukrainian company called CrowdStrike puts out an update that shuts the planet down.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't know who CrowdStrike is, when Hillary Clinton and the DNC claimed that their servers got hacked in 2019 during the campaign, they claimed that they got hacked by the Russians. And so the natural response from Trump's FBI, Trump's Department of Justice is, hey, give us those servers. Let's get those servers to the FBI so that they can track the Russian operators who hacked into your system. But the DNC didn't do that. The DNC decided that they were going to give their servers to a Ukraine-owned company called CrowdStrike. And then later on, Trump got on the phone with the president of the Ukraine and said, hey, what's going on with CrowdStrike and DNC and the servers? How come the FBI? Trump started asking questions. Why is the DNC giving their machines to a company owned in the Ukraine rather than the federal authorities here in the United States? Trump started asking those questions. And what happened to Trump when he asked those questions? He got impeached. That's what he was impeached over.
Right.
Asking questions about CrowdStrike. He makes a speech to end all speeches. It's going to save the world, unite the world, and CrowdStrike makes a mistake an hour later.
Yeah.
Is that mistake really a mistake, or was it a message? So we can take down the world. We can take down all the airports. We can take down the hospitals. We can take down the emergencies. I mean, 911 went down right here in New Hampshire. You couldn't get through emergency services here in New Hampshire because of that.
So I'd like to introduce.
Anyway, that's my conspiracy theory.
Moving right along.
That's only last Thursday's
Nothing
conspiracy
to see
theory.
here.
There's like 10 more since then.
So we were fortunate enough to have Senator Tim Lang with us tonight. Thanks for being here, Tim. And he was at the convention, and I thought that'd be really cool to have him give us his opinion of what was going on there. If the beer caucus had any input. I think there were only two of you there, right? You and Mike Moffitt. And Mike Moffitt was invited tonight, but it's his mother's 94th birthday. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So why don't you give us a little bit of rundown of that? We have a bunch of questions to ask, and maybe we can talk about things that are going on in our state after that.
Sure, yeah. So again, it was great being in Milwaukee. The energy doesn't translate on TV at all when you're in that room.
Yeah.
I was down on the floor for a little bit. I was up in the high seats, the nosebleed seats, just to see the scope, right? the group of people out there. But it was incredible. Every every night had great speakers lined up. You know, the first night we started with some Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ron Johnson and Mitch McConnell. McConnell got booed when he came out, right?
So they were consistent.
There was no holding back at this convention, right? You talked about the Hulk Hogan, probably the most exciting, right? Just the energy in the crowd just ramped straight up between Hulk Hogan and Chris Rock on night 4.
Kid Rock.
Right? Kid Rock. I'm sorry, Kid Rock, not Chris Rock. Sorry, wrong.
Chris Rock may end up at the other convention.
Yeah, he'll be there.
So it was actually really cool. You know, all the nights had some great speakers. You know, the night 1 was just a general introduction. We did our voting, right?
Yep.
Right. The first thing we did, we walked in the room. We voted 22 votes from New Hampshire to Donald J. Trump, right? So first thing, so almost the work was done. I'll be honest with you. A couple of us got up, went across the street, and had a beer.
Of course,
because our work was done for the convention. We had to wait till Thursday to hear the acceptance speech.
Right.
But listening to all the other speeches were just incredible. You know,
there were a lot of really good speeches this year. Like I've watched the RNC since the '80s, but there were some top-notch speeches on this one, and it was every night.
Every night they had somebody that was incredible. You know, Sarah Huckabee gave a great speech on night 2, right?
Yeah.
Nikki Haley gave a really good speech. Unequivocally, I endorse Donald J.
She
Trump.
got booed too, though.
And she got booed.
A few boos.
So
well,
again,
you know, her super PAC is giving all their money to Kamala.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I heard that. I haven't looked it up.
Her PAC has endorsed Kamala. How did that happen? Anyway, all right, we'll get past that.
Yep. So Vivek spoke on the second night. That
he was
great.
good too.
He was on
So
fire.
another good fire speakers. You know,
Kai Trump.
Oh yeah.
The granddaughter.
The granddaughter.
I thought
she did a great speech.
And she'd never done it before.
You could tell she was nervous.
Yeah.
You could tell she was nervous on the floor.
But that didn't transcend over TV.
It didn't. She seemed fairly comfortable on television.
Yeah, she again, great speech though.
I think she was terrific.
You know, but,
making him human. He's not the mean guy everybody thinks he is.
Everyone demonizes politicians, right?
My favorite line of hers was, "I'm a Trump too." I loved that.
Right.
Who can say that? Right. I mean, you don't say that to the president, right?
Yeah.
We can't get away with razzing on the president, but she can.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So again, night 2 was fun. It was a very young crowd.
Which is good. I saw.
Night 2 is all about the young. The chairman of the Young Republicans there, Sarah Huckabee, right? Some really younger, not JP, right? Not us.
Not us seasoned people.
We were a little excluded from that night too, but it was fun. It was a really good young crowd, like I said, Vivek and.
Well, that was great to see for me, to see the young people involved, because that's the future of the party, the future of our country. So I was really excited about. They weren't all older people as they scanned the group. You know, you could see that there were a fair amount, and also ethnically, there were other ethnics. There were different brown, colored, black, whatever. And that was really good to see in the Republican Party, because, quite honestly, it wasn't there in the past. But now it is.
Well, Tim Scott gave a great, good speech,
he
talking
did.
about Hear America, Hear Trump Roar, right? That was a great speech. I got to sit, that night I was sitting right on the floor, right? I was right in the front row, watching on the stage, right? So you could feel the passion.
And New Hampshire was in a great spot.
Yeah, New Hampshire was
there.
Yeah, New Hampshire was staged right at the front,
awesome.
right at the stage, right at the foot of the stage. So it was incredible. And then, as you went into night 3, you had, you started getting more of the people that ran against Trump, and probably more people that you're going to see in his cabinet.
I would hope so.
Right? We saw, Doug Burgum, right? Who I fully expect if Trump wins is going to be the energy secretary, right? The guy gave a phenomenal speech talking about energy and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you had J.D. Vance. His wife is phenomenal. J.D. Vance's wife is really nice.
Or something like that. I remember
Usha, And so really nice lady.
Very bright. Extremely bright.
Very, very smart lady.
Yeah.
And then J.D. Vance did his acceptance speech on night 3.
I love that he got off script a few times.
He went. A lot of people went off script because we could see the teleprompters.
Oh, you
right?
can.
So we can see what they're supposed to say, and then all of a sudden,
glean that from is like, okay, the crowd can see that they know that. Yeah.
So you know where they're coming, but so a couple of people went off script a few times, and then Friday night, Hulk Hogan. My kids were most excited about hearing Dana White speak, and he did did the UFC president. He did a phenomenal job. So yeah, it wasn't your typical, what I would think is your typical. It's my first one I've ever been to, so I don't know what typical is.
Right.
There's another untypical thing. We did talk about it because it had happened by the time we had our show last Wednesday. But the Teamsters boss. What did you think about that? I'm curious.
It was interesting. Obviously,
he started out strong, and then he went into the right to work stuff, and he went into the non-conservative stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think his message was mixed, right? And so there were a few times like, I don't agree with that, right? There's I truly don't agree. I mean, the argument that Republicans are not for the working man is just a ridiculous argument, right? In my opinion, right? Is that we truly are. We're a blue collar kind of. We care for people, regular working class people that are out there, and so, but. He started basically demonizing some businesses in this conversation. I'm like, no, I disagree with that. I think business and workers can work together. I don't think it has to be demonized, right? I don't think it's at the. So there were a couple things I wasn't happy he said that I looked at, go, wow, I don't know how he got that by the scriptwriters, right? And
he got off. He got off.
No, it was on the. It was on the teleprompter.
It was.
Yeah, and so I was surprised by some of the things he said that I don't think necessarily reflect the Republican Party.
Yeah, that was kind of a mixed one for me, but it was. I think it was night one, or night two.
Yeah, night two, I think it was. Yeah.
So it was early on, and it wasn't.
So, but again, it was true. I do think that we're seeing more unions come to the Republican Party that are willing, and it's not about.
Look at the SEIU signs.
Yeah.
Right here in Concord.
Both of them up, right?
Kelly.
But I think that again, I do think that more people in the blue collar field, in the trades, the carpenters.
Why do you think that's happening? What do you see? How do you see that?
I think a lot of it's about messaging, right? So the Democrats do a phenomenal job at Republicans hate people. Kind of messaging, right? They're not for you. They're for the guy who's got the jet plane at Laconia Airport and the multi-million-dollar house on Governor's Island.
Well,
they're not.
But then you look at our voter base, and our voter base are the working class, blue collar rednecks that are in unions.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. I think we're doing a better message getting that out there.
I agree.
I think the Republican Party is doing a much better message embracing those people. Where before you'd say union, they go, and now we don't do that anymore.
The first thing that Kamala did today when she spoke was to attack Trump by saying, he's waiting for all that big money to come in. He's, they're right behind him. And I'm thinking to myself, you just raised over $200 million in 48 hours.
Right.
And you're talking about him being the guy?
Right.
I mean, come on, really? I mean,
You're both at that level,
It just, that drives me crazy.
So, but the convention was great again. And then Trump's speech was excellent.
Were you on the floor?
I was at the, we traded passes to give everybody a chance to be on the floor.
What did you think about his entrance with it?
It was awesome. Like talk about a TV textbook.
That was awesome.
Just the crowd. You're going crazy. Again, the energy you feel in that room when you're actually on the floor.
And then he rolled out the uniform of
the guy from Buffalo, the chief from Buffalo, the fire chief. So again, it was it was a great experience. I wouldn't anybody ever has a chance go. It was really a great experience.
Because you can go as a guest.
Yeah, so I was an alternate delegate, but again, we traded passes all over the place.
So that everybody would get.
Everybody gets time on the floor.
That's
right.
Awesome.
So if even if you were a guest,
thing, right?
Well, I did that one. I just did that one night for fun, right? So one night for fun, I took the first day I was sitting on the floor right in the front of the stage, and by the end I was all the way up in the top level in the nosebleed seats. I'm like, I won't tell you what I did to deserve this seat, but
we saw you dance. That's what happened.
And I fully respect that. Anybody who sees me dance, I apologize right now to you.
No, every time they showed the New Hampshire delegation, I'm like, he's been on the show. He's been on the show.
So it was again great experience. If you can ever get the opportunity to go.
Did you feel safe there?
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, they had huge presence. I was amazed at the number of police officers that were present in there. They had people from all over the country, not just Milwaukee, not just Wisconsin.
Because Kim Cheadle was on the floor, so she had her entire.
And exactly.
So
but I didn't get my cheese head that I requested.
Yeah, sorry. We didn't have room. Mike and I talked about it. We didn't have room in our suitcase. Sorry.
Well, you could have wore it.
That's not going to happen.
They can see you on the plane with it.
So all in all, it was a good experience for you.
Phenomenal experience. So it's the second time I was out of Milwaukee. I got to go out for the first presidential debate too, and it was held in the same exact place.
Oh wow!
And that was phenomenal too. But both times I felt extremely safe. Didn't have any concerns for security. The cops were super gracious. That were there, very helpful.
Yeah, they had to make it work.
Although I did come away with it.
There were a couple of incidents outside the facility, outside the
well, it was just typical
convention
crime,
area.
right?
Yeah.
It was just typical crimes. They did have a shooting, but the shooting was two homeless guys in a knife fight, and then the guy turned a knife on the cop, right? And so there was a shooting involved in that. Had nothing to do with the convention whatsoever. But I did come away with a new law for New Hampshire, though, I got to do.
All right.
So the bar that was right across the street, surprise.
Oh, it's going to involve a bar. All right.
Beer caucus.
Beer caucus, right?
It's about the beer caucus.
So they had a cool bar where you go in, you give me a credit card, and they give you an RFID wristband. And every tap has an RFID reader. And you just walk up and you pick the beer you want, you hold your wristband up to it, pour the beer you want. They had mixed drinks there, they had sangrias and margaritas.
What if you like, no, not that one. And
you still get paid. You charge by the ounce or a fraction of an ounce. So.
So it charges by how much
by
is
each,
coming
by
out.
how much
so
you
the
pour.
tap is actually being measured.
Yeah, the tap's being measured as you're doing it. And I'm like, but in New Hampshire, apparently we can't do that.
Well, it's like self-check in the store.
Yeah, it's like self-checkout, right? And they cap it. Like, so one night I was buying rounds, right? And also it said, "You're cut off." I'm like, wait, I've only had 2 of these, right? But I'd been buying, drinks for some people out there, and I hit my cap. Like, oh, nope, you've consumed for my credit, for my wristband.
That's pretty interesting.
And so, but we can't do that in New Hampshire. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think it helps, especially in this economy. We're having a service industry,
not to make it required,
problem.
but to make it optional, right?
Right, not to make it required. Well, that's everything in business, right? We just want to make it so we don't have governmental regulation in the way.
No, it would be cool. You don't have to wait for a bartender.
Yeah. So now I'm going to look in September at what law I have to change to allow that.
Were there ever lines? Were there people lining
they have
up?
A wall.
Now I'm imagining a line at the beer buffet.
No, it was a line of taps, probably 50 taps, right? So it moved, right? Wow. And like I said, all the way down to you had soda at the very end, right? You grab yourself a Coke or a Pepsi or a Sprite or whatever. But it was just like, I thought that was a great idea, right? It did reduce the lines, reduce the wait staff service for the number of people, and allowed people to enjoy themselves. And so I came back with the idea, I'm going to find out what law. And I asked somebody, I'm like, why don't we do this in New Hampshire? Like, oh, there's a law blocking it. I don't remember which one. I got to find out what it is and see what we can do to enable that.
So I think that people would be interested in, if you wanted to talk about the difference between, you were in the House when I was in there, but the difference between how the House operates and then the Senate operates, as far as you're working together, what kinds of things?
I make a joke about child care and senior care.
I think you did that when you were in the House, though. You didn't do it when you became a senator.
So again, I served 3 terms in the House and ended as the chair of the Fish and Game Committee. And the House is utterly different than the Senate, right? In the Senate, you have negotiation with both sides on a regular basis, right? In the House, you rarely did that.
Right.
You would talk, like I would talk to my ranking member in my committee, right, and have a conversation here, what do you think, where we're going, kind of stuff. But when it got to the floor, all bets were off.
Right.
Right. I know what my committee is going to do, but all bets are off in the House, right? And so somebody out of the 400 decides they really hate this bill, and all of a sudden it's a fight where it came out of committee unanimously.
Yep.
And so in the Senate, it's a little more scripted. We know what's going to happen. Right? We have a plan. We have a process. We know pretty much how everyone's going to vote when it hits the floor.
On both sides.
Yeah, on both sides.
Right.
We know what the Dems are going to do. Dems know what we're going to do. We meet. We talk about it.
Right.
So that the process, but. I think it's a little more respectful over in the Senate. We don't get the yelling matches. We don't. We don't. We're a little more decorum shown on the floor than what we've seen in the past.
So how many committees did you have to chair?
So I served on 3 committees, standing committees. So I serve the chairman of the Ways and Means, which is taxes, fees, and gambling.
Right.
I serve as the chairman of that committee. I serve on the Education Committee. as just a member.
Right.
And then I'm the vice chair of JALCAR, which is the rules committee for the executive branch. So I serve on those three, and then I had a couple in between, like I served on the marijuana commission. I served on a commission for looking at expansion of free and reduced meals for kids in schools and what that looks like and what it would cost, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, and then the most important one that you passed, it was your bill in the House, had to do with the lottery.
Oh,
And
so gaming, yeah.
Gaming,
So
I remember being there when he signed. That was awesome.
Yeah, you were a co-sponsor with me, weren't you? Yeah.
Yep.
So we passed the sports betting bill, 2018. Once the federal government, once the Supreme Court ruled for New Jersey that sports gaming is not part of the Wire Act and therefore not governed by the federal government but decided by the states, we put a bill in. Pat Abrami and I put the bill in, and then. And yeah, it was a great thing. Although I have a great story about the sports betting bill. So right here in Manchester, the governor, we had the like first ceremonial bet that was going to happen. It was right up the street at
the DraftKings.
No, it was at Shooters or something up just to the other side, across from the snooze center. Anyway, it's a bar right there somewhere, and. So
is that Murphy's?
No, it wasn't Murphy's. It was I forget the name. It might not even be open anymore.
Yeah.
So I was standing next to the DraftKings CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, and I'm a tech guy, so we're talking tech and having a great time. So how does this work? He goes, well, I'm going to give the Network Operations Center a call, and there's literally a checkbox. And they have to check, and it turns it live, and then the governor can place his bet. I'm like, okay, and so we got talking. He showed me how to download the app. I preloaded my $50 into the app, so I was all ready, and then I staged the bet. My bet. And I was standing next to the guy, so as soon as he called the knock and said, "Ken, turn it live," I went, "Send." And so I actually got the first bet before the governor, even though he got the first one on TV. I got the first actual bet.
How'd you do?
I lost. I bet on the Patriots, and we lost that year. So
that's great. I mean, the revenue from that has been incredible. From the gaming.
Yeah, so we've done really well with revenue, exceeded expectations every single time on the revenue projections. I just talked to Charlie McIntyre, the executive director of Lottery, and we had
we have a call coming in from.
And we had to raise our revenue expectations because we were making more money than I thought we were going to make.
Nice.
Good evening, Barbara. How are you doing?
Yes, hi. First, I want to thank Mr. Lang because I was following him on Facebook, and I really appreciated the post that he put from the convention. And I was a little bit concerned when he was down in front one night. He was up in this, like, nosebleed another night. But it probably was something I would have done, too, so good for you. What I would like to speak with you about, and this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I just heard you mention that you were on JALCAR.
I am.
And we have had, in this whole last 4 years, we have had so much exposure to what non-elected officials can put America through. And I would like your perspective on what you think JALCAR should be doing in the future to take away the power. I mean, I know the Supreme Court had a decision recently regarding one of the agencies. I think it was environmental.
Well, that actually was specific.
So Barbara, yes. So I was just having this discussion today. You're talking about the Chevron deference, right? And so the Chevron deference position was that absent information, the agency's experts are more right than anybody else. Was the short version of what it did, right? The agency's right, everyone else is wrong, unless someone proves them wrong. And so I was just talking about the impact of that Supreme Court case will have on New Hampshire. So in New Hampshire, through JALCAR, which is a Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, we shorten it to
Yes, I actually served on the House Education Committee for 2 years, so I'm familiar.
So we're just talking about that again today, and the idea being that, as you know what, JALCAR, if we object to a rule, the burden falls on the if the agency goes forward with that rule anyway, even if the legislature has objected to it, which they can do because that's the executive branch, and we can't tell the executive branch exactly what to do. The burden is on the agency to prove the constitutionality and legality of the rule. If we agree with the rule, then it's presumed that the agency is right, and the presumption falls on the person complaining about the rule.
I don't understand that. If the legislature disagrees, the legislature is the governing body that created the law. And if the legislature doesn't agree with the rule, that should be the final say. The legislature should say, no, that's not the spirit of what we wrote the law for.
So again, and that's why we object, but they still get you run into an issue of constitutionality.
No, that
right?
should be the brick wall for them, right? That should be the brick wall. You object, how can they go forward?
Because you run into the...
they're not elected. This is what upsets me tremendously.
They're not elected.
These guys are not elected. You're elected.
Yep. So again, the issue becomes, it's a constitutional issue of powers, right? Is that we're equal but separate, right? The branches of government. And so the executive branch, the legislative branch cannot tell exactly the executive branch what to do. So we can put a law, and if they interpret it one way and they come back with us, we don't agree with the interpretation, we can object to it, then we can rewrite the law to clean it up, to force it into the way we want it. But they get the right to implement until we fix it. And it's because the executive branch. The legislature can't say, it's just like the judicial branch. We don't tell them much on that side either.
But Chevron deference being dropped, the Supreme Court basically said, you can't make that rule. If the law is vague, then you can't make the rule.
No, that's not what it said. What it said is that the preference in the lawsuit is now doesn't lean to the agency.
Exactly.
It stays in the middle. And both parties, the agency has to prove it's illegal, or the agency has to prove it's a legal, constitutional, and regulatory right that they can do it, and then the citizen would have to prove that no, and this is why it's not, and then the judge makes a decision. Before, they would automatically default to the agency.
Right.
And now they don't default that way anymore.
So the agencies can still make the rules.
Right.
But
the citizen has a better standing.
If the citizen goes to court, he can fight the agency.
Correct.
Right, which you could never do before.
Correct.
Right. So
well, you could do it, but you had a higher burden of proof to do it.
Exactly.
You're right, and this is another problem because we don't elect these bureaucrats. We have the three branches of government. They have elevated these agencies into the executive branch, which I don't think they belong there. That we've given them rule-making authority over what the legislature is supposed to be doing, and they're making our lives miserable.
No, I agree with you. Again, my experience in the House, when I was a chairman in the House, I had one of the agency heads. I'm like, could you please make this change? Citizens are asking for it. Would you? And he goes, no. And I'm like, I'm asking you to just open rulemaking, and no. I'm like, all right, I'll put a law. And he goes, good luck with that. I passed it, right? I made the law. I fixed the problem that
bless you.
that the citizen had, right? Because we asked the agency to do it politely through the proper way, and they just said no and refused to budge. And so I'm like, okay, so I used the legislative power, which allows me to create a law or clean up a law. And so I cleaned up a law. I created an appeal process that didn't exist when I asked them to do it. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, all right, then I'll do it in statute.
Thank you for your time. God bless you. I hope you're running again.
I am, Barbara. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Barbara.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So legislator, again, you have to be always careful of the equal but separate, the branch power, right? That we're co-branches of government.
Counterintuitive to a constitutionalist like me, right? The entire purpose of the Constitution, the entire purpose of this system of government is to delineate very specific powers that the government has, and if it's not in there, then it belongs to the citizen.
Right.
So if the law is vague in any way whatsoever, the advantage goes to the citizen, not to any rule-making party, not to the government. Not.
So it's hard. I get that. It's harder with technical issues. Like DES is the favorite target.
It really should default to, okay, if it's vague, then it favors the person at the disadvantage. And that's the way every contract is ever written. It always favors the disadvantaged. It always favors the person who didn't write the contract.
Right.
Right.
DES is usually the biggest target of this, of most of these. It's where Chevron came from, Department of Environmental Services, EPA type of things. So the argument becomes if we set, usually the example as I give is like we set a rule, we set a law that says that septic systems have to be set back so far from a lakefront. Good example, right? So we set that law, right? Then we leave it to the agency to set the rules around how do you measure, who defines, what's that look like, what is the edge of the lake, right? Those kind of things, right? All that has to be defined, right? We just said that you have to be 75 feet or 150 feet from a lake before we put a septic system in, but where exactly is that edge?
And that's all done in, goes up and down.
Exactly, right? And so you have all that. So that's usually done in rules. That cleanup is done in rules. We set the guidelines, they end up defining it, and then someone ends up objecting, right? And that's where that's where it comes in. So so that's why sometimes you have, like we set like I said, I use that example. We set 100 and whatever the number is, 100 feet from edge. Then it's up to them to deal with all the little variables that happen, like the lake rise. Is it the highest level of the lake, lowest level, the average level of the lake? What's the edge of the lake, right? And so it could mean a difference of 5 to 10 feet, which on a piece of property could make a difference of where you could put a septic system, right? So for a homeowner. So so that's usually where we end up with bureaucrats setting the guidelines for things because we set a big picture and that went into the details of the picture to deal with it. So I agree with her that I think sometimes they get a little over ambitious. But I also use things like, so we had, when I was in the House, my second term in the House, I was in a minority. The Democrats JP was there, right?
Yeah.
It sucked being in a minority.
It really did.
It was horrible, right? You kept pushing.
I've heard so many horrors.
You just kept pushing the red button. No, another bad bill, right?
Exactly.
And
I actually put duct tape over it to stay down all the time. I wouldn't have to keep pushing it.
But on Jalkar that term, we had passed the previous year EFAs. Right? We had EFAs, and we had the Commissioner of Education had to come in with rules to deal with it. And the Democrats were in control. They just kept voting down the rules.
Yeah.
So we have a law that says the commissioner shall write rules. They write rules. It goes, yeah, we don't like those. Write them again. And they were just outright because they didn't want EFAs. So they were using the power of the legislature just to block the rules around religious schools is what they were doing. Like here's the rules around this, and they just used the power to block it. And then the very first thing we did when we got elected the very next year was the first meeting we adopted those rules, right? When the Republicans got back into power, say no, you have a legislative requirement to do this. We may or may not like the rule, but it meets the legislative intent and the legislative confines. So.
Yeah, it's just frustrating for the average American when they come up against some of these rules that just seem like they're written willy-nilly to the law, right? And we're sponsored by the Wilson Hill Pistol Club. The ATF is responsible for a lot of those rules that get in my craw. So
yeah.
I will say, JP, the other thing that is different than the House is I served 3 terms, 6 years in the House. Maybe 2 times a year I'd hear from a citizen asking me for help. As a senator, in my first 6 months, I dealt with more people helping them through problems than I did my entire 6 years in the House. Yeah. More people call this state senator with problems.
Delegate to your state reps.
Well, I will say the benefit, the other side of that coin is that I actually get phone calls back from commissioners. When I was a House member, I'd call a commissioner, I would call a commissioner of safety and talk to him about something about state police.
I'll get back.
He goes, and I get some secretary say, and then I get some sergeant who calls me at, that's way down the bottom end of the pool, or a trooper. Whereas now when I call commissioner, I get a phone call back from the commissioner.
Well, that's because you make the big bucks.
Yeah, so right? It's all that big dollar.
It's the same amount of money, whether you're a senator or in the House.
But
the other thing
it does allow me, though, to do a lot more constituent service. Like I said, I've done a lot more helping people with these kind of issues. I have dealt with the DES permitting issue. I've dealt with unemployment issues, insurance issues, you name it, safety issues. And so you get one of the benefits of the Senate is I can work through and get constituents, and 90% of the time it's just making sure I get the two right people in the room, right? Because that's all you have to do. Get the two right people in the room and they'll work this out, right? But, just getting those people together sometimes that's the only thing I have to do and the problem resolves itself.
So most of the senators that we've had on, we had Steve Smith on last time, and he does a lot of constituent services. But most of the senators have so much to do. They're there 8 to 10 hours a day, every day of the week. Steve's case, it was the same thing because of his position. But I don't think people realize that. They want you to do things right away and get things done, but they don't quite understand the issue of getting things through.
Well,
and in the
some
Senate,
of us are working, right?
I was just going to say, you guys are working too. I mean,
I like when I have the fourth graders come through, I talk about all the different jobs that everybody has in the Senate. Like, in addition to being your senator, like Senator Pearl is a farmer, right? And he's out there growing corn and picking corn and growing squash and all this other kind of stuff. Or I talk about, Kevin Avard, who has a cleaning business and he's out there cleaning carpets.
You have the best gig, though. Let's face it.
I do have the best
tell
gig.
people, and you know the thing that cracks me up? Every time I see Sean Doherty, he's with one of these people. I don't know how he does that. Every time you turn around, it's like watching Where's Waldo. Where is he? But
So for my full-time gig, I'm a technologist, as I said earlier. I do network infrastructure. So my job is I work for Live Nation, the concert company, and I'm the Northeast Regional IT manager. And so I make sure that all the concerts you go to, they can scan your ticket and sell you beer. That's my whole job. If they can scan your ticket and sell you beer, I did my job.
And you have the best seats in the house.
And I get to wander around the venue, go backstage, and occasionally meet the artist, not all the time. But it's a great gig. I was just 2 nights, the last 2 nights I was up at Bank of New Hampshire for their 2 shows they had. And then Saturday.
Who was there?
So they had Daryl Hall.
Yep.
There on Monday night, and then Tuesday night they had Orr, and I don't know O.A.R. Whoever they are, but they good music. It was really enjoyable. And then Saturday I was down in Mansfield, Massachusetts at the Fish concert. And that was sold out, 20,000 people.
Doing their thing, huh?
They're still out there.
30 years now.
You're right.
Yeah, so it's a great gig. I love it. I get to, like I said, I like technology, so I do a lot of project management. And but I do that while I'm being a senator, right? So it's not uncommon for me to be sitting at a concert going, hold on, I got to take this phone call, and I'm talking to some constituent, while whatever the concert's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that you do that, you're willing to put that aside to take care of the state, which I think that's great.
Yeah, Daryl Abbas, who's a working attorney.
Yep,
You got Bill
Daryl.
Gannon he does drapery.
Bill Gannon.
Bill Gannon does pipe and drape has a pipe and drape company as well as home drapery stuff, whatever. Okay, Then you got Dan Ennis, who's a full-time professor. Right. He teaches. You got Sharon Carson, the majority leader. She still teaches college classes. So a lot of us still have gigs that we do to make our mortgage payments.
Sure. Of course. So because you can't do it on your salary.
You can't do it on $100 a year.
No.
I asked the mortgage company if that's enough, and they were not overly polite to me.
I'm sure they're not. What kinds of things are coming up that we need to be aware of? Tough bills that are coming through that you could ask people to come and testify, or
Sure.
We're at a lull right now because you're not going to do anything now.
Right. So right now it's campaign season, right? So everyone's out.
So what district is yours?
So I'm District 2. I'm the Lakes region.
Right.
So I sometimes go back. I was born in New Jersey. No, sorry, but I was born in New Jersey. I got out when in '73 or '72. When I was very young, my parents got me to New Hampshire. Back when I was still in my single digits.
And you're a refugee.
Refugee from New Jersey, I guess. So I still occasionally run back to my roots of New Jersey, and I go, I'm from exit 29 to exit 20. That's on the east side of the state.
That's how you ask people where they live.
Driving up 90, New Jersey is like, what exit you live off of?
Right.
And so from exit 20 all the way up to exit 29, the right-hand side as you're heading north, that's all my district. So.
Wow. Like 55,000 people or something?
So 68,000 people we represent in the Senate. I have 12 towns in my district that start up at Campton, Thornton, come all the way down to my hometown of San Bernardino, and then over to Guilford and Center Harbor.
So what's your best guess this year as to what we're going to be doing? I mean, do you think the top of the ticket will make a big difference on us getting elected to the House and to the Senate, executive counselor? I mean, you know, what's...
So the top of the ticket's going to drive it. And, you know, as much as bad as this sounds, I think not this last Saturday, the Saturday before, made a big difference in what's going to happen in the election. The assassination attempt on Trump is going to make a difference. I project that we'll have a red sweep. I think we'll maintain the governor's office, we'll maintain the House, and we'll maintain the Senate.
Boy, that would be great.
I don't like those predictions.
I know Gary once predicted that.
We were pretty confident in the midterms, and it didn't
Well,
come through.
Again,
Right.
The Senate I'm sure of, the governor I'm pretty sure of. I think whether Kelly or Chuck make it, I think people will vote that way. I think they like the economic boom of New Hampshire, and that's more likely to happen under a Republican governor than it is under a Democratic governor.
It'd be nice if, I mean, Trump hasn't won here yet.
Right.
So and the predictions are he's gaining here, that there's a good chance that he might win it this time.
So it'll all depend on, you know, I don't know if you saw my Facebook post, I was bemoaning the anointment of Kamala Harris before the body was even cold.
Yeah.
You know, as the Democrats, you know, they didn't even go to the number 2 guy who got the second most votes, right? They just went, Kamala Harris, when she ran in 2020 in New Hampshire, guess how many votes she got?
None.
129 votes.
That many?
That's how many she got.
That's more than I thought.
0.04% of the electorate. We cast over, I think it was, I forgot the number, 178,000 or something, and Biden got 79% of them. But she got 0.04% of the vote, 129 votes. And yet 100% of the delegates for New Hampshire for the Democratic Party went with Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
There were a lot more people on that list that got way more votes than she did.
That you know, plays into all my other conspiracy theories. Right? they have to endorse Kamala, and they have to have her have some semblance of a presidential campaign, because otherwise all of that money doesn't go anywhere, right? The Federal Election Commission said that money has to go to a Biden or Harris campaign. And so she's inherited all of this Biden money, and she's got to be the one to spend it. Now, how she distributes it and how quickly she distributes it, but we also saw that a lot of donors weren't too keen on her as well. You know, never mind the fact that, I mean, she has raised a lot of money since she started. But the only reason I think she's raised so much money since Sunday is because all the donors effectively quit 3-4 weeks ago and said, Biden. we're not donating any more money to any Democratic campaign until Biden drops out. And when he finally dropped out, I think that flood of money that she's gotten over the last 3 or 4 days is only just the money that they had already planned to give to the Democrats in one form or another. I think that's the only reason she's had this record funding. Right.
Well, I agree.
Right.
And my point was
the fact that they're backing her at the moment. I think it's money based.
Oh, absolutely. It's about the FEC and about what they can do with that money.
Another surprise up their sleeve, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see it between now and August 16th.
So again, my point was when you talk about democracy. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about
that too.
The mere fact that this was the Democratic elite anointing somebody. Right?
That's how you elected king or queen.
Yeah, they did.
And they're not doing it.
The voters were ignored in the conversation, right? Kamala Harris wasn't on the ballot at all, so nobody voted for her, right? The delegates are appointed by the nominee. Right. And yet these delegates just randomly picked somebody who wasn't on the ballot. Like the number 2 vote getter in New Hampshire was Dean Phillips. Right? Did they have a conversation with him? Probably not. It was too fast of an act. They just quickly ran to hurry up, we have to do something. Right? And they ran out and backed her. Again, I just think that it's a disservice to the voters that voted in the primary. The 16.6 million voters in the United States voted in a Democratic primary, and they were ignored.
So and they're not done yet. I mean, that's kind of my point. Is between now and the convention, they're not done screwing the voters, right? Because they've anointed her, but they plan on anointing some other people. I'm positive of it.
Well, they have to pick a new vice president, right? So they have to pick a new, VP pick for that race, and so we know there's going to be at least one more name added to that ticket.
I was just thinking, if you voted early for Biden, right?
Right.
Has voting started early?
Yeah, I think they've
I don't
had
think, no,
oh, no,
there's nothing
it's
happened
not
because they haven't had the convention
That's
yet.
right,
They have to
after
accept,
the
right?
convention.
Okay, never
Yeah,
mind.
but there was a pretty good meme out there. It's like now the Democrats have to redo that 100 million votes they've already pre-signed for Biden. Those all have to be
all of that.
redone.
Yeah. That's right, they didn't vote yet. Because
Yeah,
I was
that-
going to say, then they have no vote then. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
So it's just an amazing concept that the guy 6 months ago was presumed to be the best guy since sliced bread
Ever.
and
In the history
now
of our
you
country.
can't, and so now the guy's having a hard time walking upstairs.
I really, I felt sorry for him. And we've talked about this before. It's like, it was senior abuse, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this guy, they knew that he couldn't do this, but yet they kept, juicing him up and pushing him out into the car. And,
So-
Did you see the key phrase that Frank Biden
No,
said?
I haven't
so
seen that.
his brother put out a statement, I think Monday, the very next day, and in his statement he talks about his brother staying on, but he uses a phrase. And tell me when you use this phrase. The phrase that he uses, we're just going to enjoy the time we have left.
you use that when somebody's going to die.
That's the phrase that he used
Wow.
at the end of his statement about his brother dropping out of the race. We're just going to. So
Wow.
either there's something more serious wrong with this man that we've all known all along, but we've been gaslighted by the media and by the Democrats and by the White House, or he's referring to enjoying the time we have left where Biden has the pardon pen, right? I mean, that's the time that he's enjoying, right? Because
Yep.
I'm fully expecting that at some point as well, because I think they all know that their dealings with the Ukrainians and the Chinese, along with Hunter Biden's felony convictions, are going to be under the pardon pen at some point.
Oh, sure. I
Right?
agree.
I think that's what he's either referring to, the fact that Biden actually is dying and slipped, or he's referring to the fact that the family's like, come on, let's get on with it.
Yeah, let's commit. Let's say that he's a criminal, my son, so that I can pardon him. And he's speaking tonight, I think, at 8 o'clock. I thought it was, or is it tomorrow night? I don't
I'll
remember.
bring it back because I'm pretty sure we're not going to solve the national campaign issues right now.
We're trying.
We'll bring it back to New
Tim
Hampshire
is
where
not
something like
liking
can
my
do.
conspiracy
I know,
about
he's
theories.
not. Good, thank you.
Yeah, so I can bring it back to New Hampshire. So I think this next term is going to be interesting. Education funding is going to be a big conversation point. So I wrote the education funding plan for this year. I focused on property poor towns. How are they going to afford education? And making a lot of the money move to those property poor towns to equalize out how that works. This next election cycle, I'm looking at special education is going to be my focus. Right? I think I fixed the education funding formula. The problem with the previous education funding formula is every time we had a problem, we put a Band-Aid on it. Then we put another Band-Aid on it. We put another Band-Aid on it. And pretty soon we had this giant I ripped all those off. And I started over again. And I wrote a clean education funding formula. Adds $169 million into education over the biennium. New money to deal with things.
So have you dealt with co-ops?
So yeah, a little bit. We would deal with them on a regular basis in education.
Yeah, but I
dealing
mean,
with
as far
bills
as a
relative to-
formula, because I live in a town that is a co-op,
Yep.
and 65% of the money from my town goes to the school board, and we believe that we're charged more than we should be because of this formula.
So we did make a change to the law. I'm trying to remember if it passed the House. It passed the Senate. I don't remember if it passed the House again. I think it came from the House. We made one minor edit and sent it back. But it talked about co-ops and when they're changing the funding, the formula, how the towns are assessed. And the problem is that if you're the small town, you'll never get.
We are the small town.
You'll never get anything fixed. So we changed it we changed that law. I'm just to deal with how that happens. So you have a new process that we did. We recognized the problem of small towns in a cooperative. If the big town says, "Oh no, we want to keep it," so you pay a higher percentage, then we realized there was a problem inherent in that, and so we changed it. But the issue I'll look at is, I think recently over in Hudson, Pelham, over in that area somewhere, they had to have last August they had to have a special appropriations meeting because they had one special ed student move in who gutted the budget.
wow.
and they have a reappropriation. They appropriate more money, which requires a special meeting. And it hurt that town pretty hard because all that money went directly back to the local property taxpayer for that one student.
Yeah.
So I think the state can do a better job managing those high-cost students that are there that have a need and pick up more of that. So that's not so just because you can't control that who moves into your district, right? And so one student come in and really devastate a small town and drive up the property taxes because it's prorated. So I'm going to focus on that in the upcoming year. Education funding will be an issue, and I'll be looking at how we deal with special education funding to be able to make it easier on towns that are dealing with special ed. I think sanctuary cities are going to be another issue coming up in the next election cycle. The Senate passed an anti-sanctuary city bill, and if you don't know what a sanctuary city city is, that's where towns write policies that say local law enforcement can't contact INS. Even if you're in contact with a suspected illegal alien who you have arrested for a crime, you can't call INS to get a citizen check or anything else. And those are policies. We have them in New Hampshire. And I always forget whether it's Lebanon or Hanover. One of the one up there in the Upper Valley has the policy, and it basically prohibits law enforcement from contacting. And if for some reason you ran a name and it flagged it in NCIC, right? It flags and says, hey, and INS says, hey, we see you ran this name. Can you tell me about it? And they call. You're not allowed to tell them.
Oh,
you can't tell them where the guy is, what he's being charged with. Law enforcement
sounds like
can't tell
Hanover.
them. And it's one of those two towns up there has that policy, and so we had a bill that says no, you can't do that. You can't have a policy that prohibits law enforcement from doing their job. Right. They have the right to talk to other law enforcement agencies about any topic, right, relative to.
Yeah, state law has to take precedence in law enforcement type issues. I mean, it just has to.
And so we had an anti-sanctuary city bill that said you can't have those policies.
How many sanctuary cities do we now have in the state?
I don't know. To be honest, I know Portsmouth has. There's a new name for them now. They call them welcoming communities.
Welcoming communities.
Welcoming communities.
We got to keep changing the English language.
Move the target, right? So you get your spiel down on talking about anti-sanctuary cities, and they change the name on it, so you have to revamp and retool. But so we have a few. I don't know how many directly there are, but there should be none, right? The bottom line is there should be none, right? That if you come into contact with law enforcement and the cop runs your name and INS calls or they call INS, they should be able to have that conversation. Now, my job as a police officer shouldn't be put at risk because I was following up, on a flag. It says, oh, you have an INS flag, so you call INS to find out what it's about. You could potentially lose your job over that.
You can't be doing that because that discussion with INS may yield some more information that the feds have that you don't have, such as, hey, this guy, when he was in Venezuela, he murdered 3 people, right? That's not in your local database, right? But the feds, if you have that conversation, you can, oh, wait a minute, he's more dangerous than we thought. Right. We better go pick his butt up.
Right. So that's going to be a topic. Anti-sanctuary cities will be a topic again, I'm sure we'll see next term going on. Abortion's a perennial topic, right? On where we're going to be with that. Again,
we already have a law.
Yeah, and everyone's standing by it, right? I mean, you're always going to have outliers on either side, right?
Sure.
But on the vast majority of Republicans support the current law that is in place, and we'll continue to have the crazy left wants to have abortion up to the moment of birth, right? They want no regulations, no rules, no nothing, right? And then we have some crazy right that want 6 day, after 6 days, which most of them wouldn't even know if they were pregnant or not after 6 days, right? And so, there's some crazies on both sides, but I think we'll be continuing talking about maintaining the current law that New Hampshire has, and that's
when's veto day?
Veto days, I don't think they've set the date yet. But it's going to be September, October. Yeah, there'll be a September or early October. The governor vetoed another bill recently, so we'll have a list of a half a dozen bills we had to deal with.
Yeah.
You don't have a veto-proof majority in either place, so I don't
anticipate any of them will be overturned.
Anything's going to come.
I don't think any of the bills that were vetoed, 2 of them were, one of them this year was mine, which was okay. The governor called me and I agreed with him. And he's like, it was a edit that happened in one of the committees that took a very important sentence out of the law and nobody caught. And he goes, he called me, he goes, Tim, I'm vetoing your bill. And I'm like, why? That was your bill. Right? I'm like, I literally put that bill in for you 4 years ago, and I just decided to submit it again. He goes, no, it's not. Go read it again. And I went and looked, and he was right. It wasn't the same bill.
Yeah.
So I agreed with him. I'm like, I'll come stand with you as you veto my own bill because it was a drafting error. We made a mistake.
Which happens occasionally.
Yeah, it's a fast-paced movement sometimes. So, but yeah, so we'll be dealing with education. We'll be dealing with abortion. We'll be dealing with sanctuary city bills. Election law is always a big conversation point about. We have the voter ID law this year.
That went down.
And which I think is. I'm a town moderator.
But it's not going into effect
until the next election cycle.
Exactly.
Right. So give everybody time. I'm a town moderator. I've been doing it for 12 years in my local town. Right. And again, I think the law was a reasonable ask. So a reasonable step. So.
Yeah, that won't really stop anyone from not voting.
No, again, you look at how many things you need your driver's license for, right?
Exactly.
You can't buy beer without a driver's license. You can't open a bank account without a driver's license.
Anybody who leaves the house without an ID of some sort, it amazes me.
The argument is always around the homeless, right? That's who don't have information like that. But I disagree. I think they. You talk to them, a lot of them do. I mean, JP, you've done work with homeless with your veterans program, right?
Yes.
And they get IDs and you help them get IDs,
exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And so these agencies that are helping people out that's part of their job is to get the homeless people back and get them the things they need, whether it's insurance or driver's license or IDs, just non-driver's IDs, right? So,
I've always thought this idea of not having an ID or not being able to get an ID was just a farce. Because of that,
you can get an ID.
There's so many agencies that help you out, but then you see, folks want to demonstrate that. You saw this fella take a camera and a microphone and walk through the streets of New York City. Right, one of the big things was that voter ID disenfranchises minorities. Mm-hmm. So he walked through the city and he talked to all the minorities that he came across, Latinos, blacks, Asians, and said, do you have an ID? Mm-hmm. Do you have an ID? And it's insulting.
Right.
It's actually racist. It's insulting to assume that a black person does not have an ID and can't get one.
Does not have to do it.
It's insulting to insinuate that someone can't do that. Right. It's just a farce.
Well, yeah, and every vote, I'm not a believer in mass fraud when it comes to voting, but I am a moderator, and someone in my town voted twice, right? They voted once in my election and also in Massachusetts. I didn't know that when I was moderator, when the guy came to vote, but it happens, right? And so it does happen, and so the more we can do, the favorite phrase I heard, I think it was Senator Gannon said it on the floor, it might have been Senator Gray, was we want to make it easy but secure, right?
Yeah,
right? We want to make it easy to vote, hard to cheat. Yep. Right? Yep. That's what we want to do. We want to make it easy to vote, hard to cheat. And so we'll be talking about more of those laws as well.
All right.
Well, we need to wrap it up.
We need to wrap it up. Let the viewers know how they can get a hold of you, ask questions.
So, Senator Tim Lang, I'm from Senator District in District 2, which is the Lakes region. My email address at the Senate is timothy.lang@leg.state.nh.us. And feel for my phone number, 603-566-9802. Feel free to text me or call me.
Right,
thanks.
Thank you. And who do we have next week?
Next week we have a couple of veterans coming on. And we're going to talk about how they're doing since they came back. We have one of the people. Well, actually, they're both commanders of American Legions, and it'll be very interesting. We have, Dylan Gray and Don Mann. So, be great.
All right, we'll see you next week.